Mark Levine from EBMG, and we're a local New York City property management firm. And today, this is actually my very first video with somebody else that's other than me sitting in front of the camera. So I'm here with Scott Kamen, and he is a principal architect of Kamen Tall Architects PC, correct? Yes. And you're based out on the Upper East Side of New York City. So I thought this would be the perfect place for us to talk about a lot of the issues that are happening with Local 11, and we'll get into some other things and maybe some other videos. But if you wanted to give like a 2-second background of you and your firm, and then we'll go into the Local Law 11 of what we wanted to speak to.
Sure. Kamen Tall Architects is primarily a facade and exterior restoration firm. We specialize in preservation, conservation, and restoration. Mostly of significant buildings, landmarks, preservation buildings in New York City.
Okay, and that's perfect. So Local 11, we've covered it in topics before, but it's for buildings that are greater than 6 stories. They, every 5 years, have to go through a cycle of inspections to see if they're safe or unsafe, or if they have to go through it. Right now we're in cycle 8. And we've said before that it's broken down between cycles A, B, and C, and depending on the last digit of the block number of your building, if you are a building that is supposed to be complying with it, that dictates which subcycle you're in. So
that is correct.
Now I know cycle 8, that's pretty strenuous. Cycle 7, they had the addendum so that you would have to do fire escapes and railings, and they made it a little more strict in that sense, and now it's all looped into 8. But I know that there's some changes coming with cycle 9, I presume, and how the Facade Inspection Safety Program is going to be run. So do you have any insight on what the changes are going to be?
Absolutely. Most architectural firms that are working in the programs that we're involved with on exterior restoration work have to attend regular meetings at the Department of Buildings in New York City. And over the years, as the FISP program, which is what Local Law 11 of 98 is based on, Facade Safety Inspection Program, the laws are becoming much more strenuous. The safety requirements are becoming much more articulated, and requirements are getting greater and greater because the city is recognizing that a large percentage of the buildings are reaching their 80th and 90th and 100th year birthday, and we're simply involved in programs to keep these structures safe. And as a matter of fact, some of the newer buildings are also entering the program with a lot of vigor and repairs that are necessary.
On the newer buildings, are you seeing it more of the facade? I know we have a lot of wall systems as opposed to like the brick construction, maybe that's pre-war. Are a lot of the issues that you're seeing on the newer construction related to more of the balconies, or where there's concrete, or where are you seeing it mostly? If it's not, you know, the curtain wall construction, where is it?
That's a very good point you raised. The newer buildings are primarily curtain wall and window wall construction, which are much more modern systems. As a result, these systems are very highly engineered, and they have very little redundance. So anything that goes wrong means that a lot of things are going wrong because they don't have backup systems. We're seeing a lot of deficiencies in the modern balcony construction. We're seeing deficiencies in the window wall construction, where 4 and 5 years out, the occupants are complaining about heat loss, they're complaining about discomfort, and ultimately these complaints usually resolve themselves in something that's actually structurally or energy-wise deficient in the building itself.
And I know we're dealing with that on a few different projects where it's newer construction and there's developer issues. So I feel like that's something that's really come to a head. And I almost feel like a lot of the older buildings that we're dealing with are maybe built a little bit better. You know, the old adage that it's the better construction was in the past. They don't make it like they used to, and we're definitely seeing that.
That's true. The older buildings were able to go out much further before they needed major repairs because they had a lot of redundancy. You had very thick masonry walls. You were relying on a lot of steel and masonry. The newer buildings, again, highly engineered. Once they develop a problem, it's a big problem. The older stock buildings, primarily the first round of New York City high-rises, which is around 1929, were able to go out 80 years before the city really felt the impact of lack of maintenance.
So getting back to local law 11, right now we have to do drops to inspect the general facade just to see if there's any unsafe conditions that you could see as an architect that's a trained eye, because we're not the trained eyes. We manage, but we're not like you where we have our licenses and we go for certification. So what is current right now? Is it 1 to 2 drops per elevation, and what's it changing to?
We used to be able to inspect up until around 2006 and 7 with 1 drop. The law provided that you had to do 1 hands-on inspection. But because the buildings were continually requiring maintenance from cycle to cycle, the city felt that they wanted the maintenance to be covered in a wider scope in 1 operation. So now we're incentivized to do more than 1 drop to really get the feel of the building, not only take care of unsafe conditions, but also conditions that need basic repair. The direction that we're going in is to do more comprehensive scopes of work.
Okay, and with more drops comes more money.
With
right?
more drops comes more money.
So they could expect, and when they're doing that, when we're doing the repairs to, let's say there's a lintel and a little bit of brick that needs to be done, do we have to go outside that scope and say, okay, we have to prove to the city now that not only is that lintel and the brick above it safe, but do we have to go out kind of in an expanded area?
Absolutely. We're inspecting a much wider scope than we did before. We can't just target the deficiency. We have to look at the building more holistically. In the end, repairs that go unrepaired for several cycles usually get exponentially more expensive because systems begin to fail behind the systems that have already failed. So doing the work up front is more expensive in the immediate cycle, but a fraction of the cost when the maintenance is put off for 10 years. Actually, the co-op, what we're seeing in the co-op and condo industry is that if they defer the maintenance too long, they actually can't really do it in one fell swoop. They have to do several stages of very expensive maintenance.
Right.
Where if they had done it in the first, when the defects were first noticed, when the building was first surveyed for its defects, it would have been a costly repair, but they would have been done for many, many more years, even decades after that point.
So I guess it would make sense even, we've probably spoken about this before, but if a building was to take the mindset of, we need to get this as a normal capital plan, have inspections regularly, even if it's in every 5 year with the cycle, with the local law 11, the FISP inspections, maybe it would make sense to just have that as part of your normal operating, even though it's a capital expense, so you could kind of hedge away from the big expense every 5 or 6 years, and then just have a plan going forward, and having somebody like yourself to say, okay, every year I'm looking at this project and these are the things that I'm noticing. So filling in the gaps between those 5-year projects, we could probably offset a lot of the, I almost want to call it like a wartime expense, you know, of going through the local law 11 cycle, and we can do these repairs before they become an unsafe condition or a needed swamp repair.
Well, that's exactly what the nature of the operation is now. As architects, we're trained to see, first and foremost. And if we can get a handle on the building, survey the building up front before, instead of targeting individual repairs, you know, a loose balcony, falling railing, if we can get a handle on the building as a whole, we can now take the pieces of this puzzle and sort of span it out over time in a logical way so that maintenance is constantly being done, no great expense is realized all of a sudden, and it could be factored into the building's yearly budget rather than a one-time huge expense. That's really the nature of planning these projects.
And then on the co-op or condo side, we're alleviating hopefully the huge maintenance increase in year 5. Let's say where, oh, we have this huge project that's going to be $800,000. We need to increase maintenance, or we need to provide for an assessment. If we have that and we can track that over a period of years, I would imagine that the management of the cooperative or the condo would be a lot easier, because then we can forecast out what the expected cost would be. And then we're also in the situation, I guess, looking at it from the manager's perspective, where when we're bidding out the work, contractors know that we don't have a gun to our head, so they don't have the leverage over the building. So maybe we could keep the prices just a little bit lower, and that's one way of, maybe it's an extra cost every year for an architect per se, but you're making back the cost on the contractor.
Well, this is where management plays, especially good management, plays a critical role. If management can sort of get a handle on what the architect is actually seeing out there, and the job can be put together as a whole, we can take it out many years so that it's incrementally phased with the building's budget. Because the budgets of co-ops and condos, although they're finite, they are renewable. But you can't really do a job that quadruples the budget in one year without causing a lot of pain to the entity. So what we like to do is work hand in hand with management to develop a feasible plan for the future where the building actually jumps up a full grade. It goes from a C to a B, from a B to an A, and over a span of time, the building gets to be fully restored without the building department having to cause any more immediate action.
Right, we're getting ahead of that and we're getting ahead of the problems. But,
okay.
So I think that is pretty much a good summary of the changes to the local law, and just I think we gave a lot of people a lot of good ideas on how to manage the capital expense of going through the capital projects and the inspections and all that. I'm certainly going to give all of your contact information on the video, but your website is KamenTallArchitects.com.
Yes.
I'm going to leave your email on the bottom too, so it's Scott@KamenTallArchitects.com. I'm sure he answers emails almost as furiously as I do, maybe not as furiously, but yeah. But if everybody wants to follow us on social media, you can find us all over. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, /XL Bradshaw. On Twitter, we're @XL Bradshaw, and everywhere else @XL Bradshaw. You can email me, Mark Levine, at mblevine@ebmg.com. Again, I'm Mark Levine from EBMG. This is Scott Kamen from Kamen Tall Architects, and we all hope to be in touch. Until next time.